Playing small does not serve the world. Why am I saying this? I took this quote from a film called Coach Carter. But why am I saying this random quote? It's because it really resonated with me and what I was about to do. But my journey really started when I had to say what I did for my last 5 years of my life. What made me, me? Two specific things though. The first one, I was a refugee worker. I used to go out to different refugee camps all across the world, doing different jobs such as shoe distributions, management of thousands of crowds, and taking part in different activities of such. Seeing sites like this on a regular, thousands and thousands of refugees as far as the eye can see, and what did I do? I had to manage with them. But what this story really taught me, and what being there really taught me, was the power of positive energy and the power of positivity as a whole. I used to work, believe it as such, 22 hours a day when I was there, 22 hours a day on the border, 2 hours of sleep a day. But how did I do this? People told me, Faisal, you're exaggerating. But in reality, that wasn't the case. I went out there and worked because the energy around me was so good. And that's the power of positive energy. But this was all unlocked by my mom, who was also in the crowd today. She enabled me to go out to these different refugee camps and see this and really unlock this true passion and potential of mine, as she is also a charity worker and does this kind of thing. But one thing me and my mom don't get along with is trainers. I waste my money on trainers all the time. For me, that's not the case. For me, it's money well spent, but that's an argument for another day. But what this taught me was the art of buying trainers and selling them and making a business out of it. Buying, selling, and trading. My parents don't get the concept. I do, so that's all that matters. But when my journey really starts to take part, is I was in my final year of my product design course, with this piece of paper in front of me that said, Faisal, what are you going to make for your final year project? I said, I have no idea. I'd spent the prior summer thinking about this, and this was my perfect opportunity to make something special, but I had no clue. And that was the problem. What was I going to do? All I knew was I had to help, but then I decided, you know what, let's call a couple of friends. Let's see what they say. I called them up and they said, Faisal, do what you know, do what you love. I go, sneakers, refugees, don't really mix. They said, Faisal, do what you know, do what you love. Because if you do what you love, you'll love what you do and you'll do it better. I said, okay, let's pick the more obvious option. Sneakers. I'm joking, guys. Of course, I was going to help the refugees, but how was I going to help them? That was the real question. All I knew when I was going out on these trips was, how did I want to help them? I wanted to help them in a way that no one helped them before. I wanted to do the problems that were overlooked. I wanted to help them in a way that no one had seen. I remember going out on these trips and feeling that element of, I wish I could help these people more. I wish I could. I'm helping them one by one, but I wanted to help them as a whole. And that was my job, that as a designer specifically. So I decided to look at them as a whole as I wanted to help them as a whole. And I looked at this. They used a journey from Homs, Syria to Germany, which was the most common trip they used to take. This is the journey from hell, as I would call it. They had to expose themselves to all different environments to get through this journey, but the numbers shocked me. I had to appreciate and understand that they walked on their bare feet and on shoes that weren't appropriate 2,500 kilometers. Imagine that. But this really wasn't put in perspective until I appreciated, in my perspective and in my world, what that was. So I was driving back to my hometown, Manchester, one day. And I was like, this is equivalent for me going from here to Manchester 8 times. Imagine that. And imagine on the conditions that they would have to go through. But I really wanted to encapsulate myself into what a refugee life is and how they would envision this whole kind of scenario. So I put myself in their scenario. I want everyone to close their eyes now. I want everyone here to picture this refugee camp in Amman, Jordan. This refugee camp scorching hot like a desert. Imagine that. Imagine having to call this place home because you had no choice. Imagine that. Imagine, as far as the eye can see, there was refugee tents all over the place, but yet you didn't know anyone. Imagine that. Imagine having to call this place called home, but having no stable resources, no stable food, no stable water. Imagine that. But imagine having to transition to the cold climates of Europe and being in a refugee camp there, exposed to 0-degree temperatures. Imagine that. Imagine shivering to your bones, wet, cold, dirty, but not having a solution. Imagine calling a shipping container your home because you had no choice. Imagine that. Everyone open your eyes. These were the harsh realities that I had to put myself in to experience what a refugee was going through so I could really try and help them in my own way. But funnily enough, I'd seen this. I'd taken this picture on one of my previous visits to the refugee camps. I'd seen this problem, but now I realized it was my time to fix it. What can this picture identify? It can identify a shoe that didn't fit the user, didn't fit the individual. A shoe that wasn't appropriate to go through the horrible conditions that Europe was going to expose its feet to. Conditions of 8-inch mud, snow, wet terrain. A shoe that wasn't medically ready for the trip they were about to go on. That was my problem. This picture identified my problem. But the real question is, what did I know about shoes? I spent my last 2 years of my product design course making products, not shoes. Didn't know how to stitch even. But that wasn't the problem to me. Because I remember this quote that my teacher at high school once said to me, Faisal, your biggest weakness is what you don't know, you don't do. So you'll never be great at that. I said, that kind of quote infuriated me because of this identity that I wanted to build myself in all aspects. I wanted to make sure that I was great in everything so I could really help people in my way. So I said, university is the perfect opportunity to learn. Let's take this opportunity and try and build something new. Try and understand this. But how was I going to do it? That's the question. Where do I start? This university was not entailed to make shoes, and neither was I. But I decided to do this. I decided to go to the experts. I decided to go to Dr. Martens to understand how a shoe was made from 0 to 100, from start to finish, to understand that process so I can start building my knowledge. Syria Relief, a charity based around helping Syrian refugees to understand my user case better, to really know how to help them, and to really understand if the product was going to work or not. Because as a designer specifically, it's easy to fall under this false pretense of believing your design is the best and your design will work, which I didn't want to do. Missan Textiles, to make a shoe of the right materials, to make a shoe that would work for refugees within the conditions they were going through. Brunel University, to speak to their leading experts in manufacturing, to make a shoe of today, not of yesterday. And a podiatrist, lastly, a foot doctor, to understand the biomechanics of a foot so I can make essentially a shoe that was comfortable. Funny how I hated biology at school, but I had to use it now, and I wanted to use it now. But then reality came back to me, and I said, what do I do? I had no idea. I'd spent 4 of the 6 months of my final year project trying to figure out what my point was, what I was going to do, what my case was, and how was I going to help. But in reality, I didn't know my product specifically. But this all came to this. I decided, as designers know well, the funneling system. I had accumulated so much information on what, why, and how that I didn't know in reality what I was going to do and what the real problems were. So I looked at this. I brought them down to 3 main pain points that a refugee goes through. The first one, the climate change. That transition from a hot climate country to the cold climates of Europe, for me, was vastly overlooked. For me, was something that was not considered. These people had to transition through this journey of hell, and people accepted it. They said, okay, it's fine. But for me, that was a problem. The sizing of a shoe. I remember recollecting back when I was giving out shoes at the shoe distribution. I remember people could take what they could get, not what was suitable, not what was right. I remember kids taking and adults taking shoes that are 2 sizes too big for them, 2 sizes too small for them. Why? Because they didn't have a choice. I wanted to give them that choice. Something to humanize them, something to really help them. And lastly, suitability. I wanted to make a shoe that was right for the terrain. And I want to ask you all a question. When do you ever recollect giving or donating a shoe that was your best shoe? That was the shoe you just bought from the shops. For me, I don't remember doing that, and I definitely don't remember giving it. And that was the problem. Let's say even if these shoes were right size, they weren't ready for the conditions they were about to go through. But this also related back to when I was translating for doctors, I'd found out that 8 in 10 of the refugees roughly would have diarrhea. And what's diarrhea caused by? Poor sanitation. And what part of your body touches the ground the most? It's your feet. And we could reduce that number vastly if we gave them the right footwear. But in reality, what was that? I came back and forward and spent night and night struggling with this idea, but knowing I wanted to do something great. Had to get my friends to teach me how to stitch. Had to get my friends to really empower me to push myself to create this product for the people. And what did that come to? It came to this. The world's first size adjustable shoe. A shoe built for refugees, made to serve the world. A shoe built to adjust from size 6 UK to 11 UK. A shoe built for the people. A shoe built to withstand the terrain they were about to go through. But this shoe came from this idea that I wanted to make something that would humanize them, make something that would enable them to have a more comfortable journey. Maybe it's not the solution, and I know it's not the solution to their problems, but it's one step in the right direction for me. And what did this all come from? This came from this idea. Playing small does not serve the world. I said this quote at the start, nobody understood what it meant, but now I'm going to relay it back. This playing small enabled me to push myself beyond my limits. I said, that person telling me, Faisal, do what you know. You'll get a better grade. University is about grades, so you can get a better degree. I said, doing small does not serve the world. I didn't care about the grade. I cared about helping people, and that was my power. But funny also, we took two things at the start. We said sneakers and refugees. What the hell did they have to do with each other? And I put them together, showing the power of using what you love, using that positive energy and enabling you to make something great, to make something that's really worth your while and enabling a better future for everybody. But that was my journey. I'm Faisal Tayan, and this is the world's greatest selfie. Thank you.